So we have two local school districts, not local, one local to Sacramento, one from the North San Diego area. Is that Eastern San Diego or Northern San Diego, Mr. Vopel? Eastern San Diego. And this is related to refugee student support programs. This is an issue that we thought would be important to hear this year. California is certainly home to a great number of refugees, and we're proud of that. And regardless of what the debate is in Washington, there still is an issue of refugees properly vetted coming to California, and we want to make sure that they do well and that we can help assimilate them into our California society. And so a big part of that is the public school system. So we have a panel here to talk about these issues and what we could potentially do to improve the situation. So first I would allow our school board member from the Cajon Valley School District and our Associate Superintendent for San Juan Unified to present to us.
Good morning. My name is Tamara Otero, and I'm a trustee of the Cajon Valley Union School District in El Cajon. We're a pre-K through 8th grade district of 27 schools serving nearly 17,000 students. Today, refugees make up nearly 1 in 5 students in our district, mostly from Iraq and other Middle Eastern countries. I'm here today to share a little bit about the wonderfully diverse family of students who are anxious to be the next generation of Americans. Several months ago, we put out an all-call for stories about our refugee students. In the packet that we provided you, you'll find a booklet of these stories written by teachers about their students. These stories will describe the true lives of our students better than we could. They write about middle school students with no previous formal education that stay after school for hours because they're excited to finally read, opening a new and exciting world for them. There are stories of teachers learning from students, stories about the curiosity and wonderment that students elicit in one another. Shocking stories about war and trauma are in there too. We wanted to share these with you because they paint a true picture of everyday classroom experiences in our schools. We've had English learners in the Cajon Valley area for a very long time. About half of our students today speak a language other than English at home. But I can tell you that the students coming from war have a particular need beyond language. We have young children crawling under their desks when they hear the bell, 10-year-old students who cry for weeks in front of their peers because school is the first time in their life they've been separated from their mother. This is the reality of educating children who grew up in refugee camps. Earlier this year, a team of us went to Dearborn, Michigan to learn from educators who have been serving a similar community for decades. When we returned, we started a newcomer task force. The recommendations from this group have influenced our new LCAP plan. English language coaches in schools for the first time, counselors, family liaisons, and training on trauma for students and teachers. We will continue our newcomer welcome program, which assigns a bilingual family liaison to every newcomer to welcome parents and understand their needs. Our parent university, which is currently grant funded, also has a key role in bridging wide cultural gaps in schools. Your packet also includes articles in the press about our work from the Washington Post, the AP, the Atlantic, the Union Tribune, and others. In the Atlantic, we were credited with actually looking into the community and appreciating what the needs are and then making the changes. We are doing what we can, but the truth is that refugee students have exceptional needs, and they arrive all throughout the year, as you can see by the data sheet that we provided. This year, we received over 850 newcomers since August, more than double this time last year. Hundreds of them arrived after the CalPADS reporting data, which means hundreds of thousands of dollars of our own expenditures will be unfunded this year. With funding from the California Welcomes Refugee Package, we would be able to implement the full recommendation of the Newcomer Task Force in order to properly serve all of our newcomer students. We'd like to hire additional Arabic and Farsi-speaking paraprofessional staff to support transition to school and in-class language support. Our students need counseling services and one-on-one assessments in their native language. We also want to expand opportunities for teachers to connect more deeply with the students and parents through home visits and refugee simulations. And we want to invest in our teacher pipeline efforts in order to bring more Arabic-speaking teachers into our community and into our schools. Ultimately, I believe the question that we all need to ask ourselves is, what future do we see for these children? Do we see one of long-term social dependency because of a gap in education, language, and skills? Or do we see one of success, supported by care and compassion, and strengthened through learning opportunities in schools to help them become contributing members of society? Hope is a powerful stimulant for growth. Thank you. And again, I'm Tamara Otero, and I appreciate your time, Mr. McCarty.
Thank you for your testimony. San Juan Unified School District.
Good morning, Chairman McCarty and committee members. I'm Donna O'Neill. I'm the Associate Superintendent for Schools and Student Support in San Juan. As you know, as many of you know, San Juan is a suburban school district east of Sacramento with 1 in 8 students classified as an English learner. In the past several years, we've experienced a significant amount of growth in the number of refugee students we have, and if the projections are correct, the pattern's going to only continue. We currently have over 1,100 refugee students in their first 3 years of U.S. schooling, which represents close to a quarter of our English learners within our district. To get a sense of how fast the group is growing, and this is similar to Cajon Valley, since July 1st, we've enrolled 437 new refugee students, 155 since January 1st. Again, after our funding numbers are taken. Students are primarily from Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, and they come to us speaking Farsi, Dari, Pashto, and Arabic, languages that are less common among our staff members. We're fortunate to work with community partners, including SETA, World Relief, Opening Doors, and many others, which allows us to be proactive in thinking about how we will serve the needs of these students and families. But the students who come to us face significant challenges. The trauma that many of the refugee students experienced in their home countries and during the resettlement process leaves them wary of things which are common to us, like fire drills and loud noises. Some students act out while others withdraw, with many in need of counseling or mental health supports to address the effect of the trauma they've experienced. Currently, we have 1 counselor dedicated to supporting our 1,100 students. The second challenge they face is interrupted schooling. Because of the family's experiences before coming to the U.S., many children have been out of school for months or even years, and many never have had a stable school experience. For older students who are coming to us, this severely limits their chances of receiving a diploma unless they continue on into adult education or in the community college system. Compounding the effects of trauma and disrupted schooling are the lack of understanding of expectations that in American schools that we take for granted. Things as simple as lining up to walk in a hallway, changing classes when a bell rings, or getting your lunch in a cafeteria line. As a system, we face an additional challenge of identifying the refugee students who are in our schools. Those who come through our resettlement partners, their status is clear, but we have large numbers of students who come to us as potential refugees based on their country of birth. So it's likely that we are undercounting the refugee students who are within our school district. We've been fortunate to continue to receive the Refugee School Impact Grant from the Department of Social Services, but the $128,000 grant that we received this year barely scratches the surface of addressing the unique needs of this population. We use those grant funds to provide a 10-week Saturday academy for refugee families with English language development and socialization for students, and parent meetings building language and cultural understanding for adults. In addition, we provide parent information and outreach with translation and interpretation support to ensure parents have information that they need to support their children at home. And finally, we fund the Bolt after-school program at Howe Avenue Elementary, focused on oral language development through music and rhythm. If you're able to provide additional funding, we would accelerate our plans to open a transition program for our newcomer students that will provide a smoother transition into our U.S. schools, staffed with teachers and bilingual instructional assistants who speak the languages the same as the students. We would expand our professional development at schools where there are concentrations of refugee students to make sure that families experience a welcoming and supportive climate in offices, classrooms, and on-school campuses. And finally, we would expand our Saturday academies to serve more students and families and add follow-up social, emotional, and counseling supports for students after the academy ends. Refugee students have unique needs that exceed those of other English learners or immigrants in our schools. If the California budget is able to include additional funding for refugee services, it would be a significant help to the families we serve now and those who will serve in the future. On behalf of San Juan Unified School District, thank you for your consideration of funding to support some of our neediest students.
Thank you. We'll stop real quick and call the roll.
Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Chavez? Limon? Here. Medina? Here. Marsucci? O'Donnell? Here. Bopel?
Thank you. Lastly, we want to hear from World Relief Sacramento to give us a perspective from a refugee organization, resettlement organization on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCarty and other subcommittee members. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, there are
So
now...
your name and...
I'm sorry. Kurt Lewis, Director of World Relief, the Sacramento Field Office of World Relief.
Okay.
So according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, there are now over 65 million men, women, and children displaced by war, violence, and persecution. 26 million more than the entire population of our great state. Since the passage of the Refugee Act in 1980, the United Nations Refugee Admissions Program has served to keep true the words written on the base of the Statue of Liberty, with over 3 million of these homeless tempest-tossed finding welcome and new hope here in the United States. What role has California played in this, one of our nation's most admirable legacies? When I was in kindergarten through third grade in San Rafael, California, little did I know that on the other side of the hill, the recently decommissioned Hamilton Air Force Base was serving as the International Office of Migration's Refugee Transit Center, where over 180,000 Thai, Laotian, Cambodian, and Vietnamese refugees were beginning their new lives here in America. Harkening back to those times when Southeast Asian refugees were forced to flee with the U.S. withdrawal from Vietnam, the United States has welcomed since 2008 over 44,000 brave Iraqi and Afghan men and women and their families through the Special Immigrant Visa program after they served the U.S. military and government in those protracted wars at great risk to themselves and their loved ones. I know their bravery firsthand, remembering the Iraqi national who served my team when I was a soldier in the U.S. Army doing a tour of duty in Iraq in 2003. Of those 44,000 special immigrant visa holders, 14,000, that's a little over 30%, have made their first new home in the United States right here in California. Of those 14,000, approximately 13,000 have arrived in just the past 3.5 years. During the same time, those 3.5 years, there was over 20,000 traditional refugees who were resettled in California, most from countries in Iraq, Iran, Syria, Ukraine, Congo, and Somalia. In keeping with the Refugee Act of 1980's design to leverage local ownership and investment from the private sector, the State Department's Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration has contracted with 9 national NGOs, otherwise known as voluntary resettlement agencies, to carry out the initial reception and placement services of newly arrived refugees. I represent one of those 9, World Relief. It's specifically the Sacramento office, which has resettled in partnership with thousands of volunteers and dozens of churches and community groups over 30,000 refugees here into the Sacramento area since our office opened in 1989. Yet the role and resources of resettlement agencies and their partners are limited and do not provide the kind of comprehensive services our new refugee neighbors need. This is true for school-aged children and the school districts they are in, especially if they are heavily impacted by a sudden surge in arrivals, as has happened in several districts here in California. Remember that over 50% of all refugees globally are children. As was noted in our schedule and notes for today, the Federal Refugee School Impact Program, their supplemental funding for impacted districts like these has helped, but in my opinion, they are still insufficient for this historic moment and challenge. And make no mistake, we are living in a historic moment for this state and its role in this global refugee crisis. The proposed one-time Prop 98 funding for these districts would, in my opinion, be a very worthwhile investment in this young generation of new Californians. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you for your testimony. I'll start with just a couple questions. So the proposal we have here is a one-time infusion of support, which could be spent over a 3-year period. So it's not always wise to, for example, hire a new teacher or a new position with one-time money. So, but if it is over a 3-year period for the 2 local school districts. How could you utilize those dollars to make sure that they help and they don't create a burden at the end of the grant period, and that really get the biggest bang for the buck to help these students?
I think for Cajon Valley, one of the difficulties that we've had is the transition from with the first day that they enter our schools to them actually understanding, and it was alluded to as well from San Jacinto, the social pieces of schooling. They don't know how to get a lunch, how to go to a locker room. They've never been in formal schooling. Many of them, when you talk to them, have huge gaps in their education. So if we were able to use some of that funding to help us with that transition piece, the piece that is really fairly short in time length, to help explain what school is about, to reach out to their families, bring their families in, help explain to their families what school is about. We already have those systems in place. A lot of those systems are currently grant funded, and that grant is expiring. This is Eyal Bergman from my school district. He's our Family and Community Engagement Officer, and he has spent a great deal of time helping those families transition into our community and into our schools. So frankly, one-time funding, while it may not be available to hire a teacher with a lasting contribution to our school district, it would be available to help us with those transition pieces.
Okay.
And I would echo those same comments. We layer our funding, so the one-time funding would be in addition to LCFF supplemental dollars, Title III, Title I federal dollars, but it would allow us to fill in the gaps and really increase the capacity of our entire school district, because teachers, principals, the school communities are receiving students that they don't understand the culture, they don't understand the experiences of the students. And that kind of professional learning, short-term assistance helps lift our entire community so that we can fully embrace the new students and families and bring them into school. We are also looking at some kind of transition service, because we're really not sure how long this large increase, this large influx is going to last, but we don't anticipate it lasting 10 years. So we need something to get us through, over that hump, and allow us to lift the capacity of our entire school district.
Thank you. Mr. Medina?
Thank you for being here. As a teacher of newcomer program in the Riverside Unified School District, and before that, teaching in the 80s in the Redlands Unified School District, where we did have the influx of Southeast Asian refugees. And then later on, as I said, as a teacher in the newcomer program, we were a magnet program for all newcomers in Riverside. I very much understand the importance of what you're trying to do with your ask of $5 million, and certainly know how important that is to transition these students who I had in my classroom, who don't know what it is to go from one classroom to another in junior high. And to make it more complicated, in Redlands, we had a rotating schedule, so that every day was a different schedule. Every day you were in a different place at a different time. Those kind of things, and to communicate and have gaps in your education certainly are challenges that need to be addressed in a special way. So I certainly support your ask, and thank you for being here to present them.
Thank you.
Mr. Bopel?
I don't look upon this issue as a bipartisan issue. It's a nonpartisan issue, because in my district, in our section of San Diego, we have assimilated massive amounts of Laotians and Vietnamese. We also had a massive wave of Eritreans, Somalians, and Ethiopians. Now this is another wave. So one of the reasons the refugees end up in certain areas is we're so good at absorbing them and doing what we need to do. So I pledge to the chair and my colleagues that I will work as hard as possible supporting this. And it's really a drop in the bucket. A question to my El Cajon friends, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
What's the average cost per year of a brand-new refugee that's dumped on your front porch?
The average cost per year that we receive and to educate an American child is around $6,000 to $8,000 a year, depending on your district and your circumstances. But we estimate the cost of a newcomer to be more in the $85,000 to $10,000 per child. Part of that also includes training some trauma-informed care for our staff, because they have no idea how to respond to some of the issues that they're dealing with these children.
Thank you. I think it's very clear to us the graphic need here. One last comment. I've suffered lifelong since 1969-70 from PTSD, and I was a 19-year-old highly trained military. I cannot imagine an 8 or a 10-year-old going through half of what I did. So hang in there, guys. Hang in there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Vopel. Again, this is you're right, this is a bipartisan issue, and I'm glad that California is embracing this issue. And just for the set the record here, this is part of a larger package that we're putting forward this year. It's that California welcomes refugees. Certainly, we know that there's an impact on our schools, which we just heard today. We also want to help individuals who come here as adults engage in higher education more rapidly. So we had a proposal in a bill going forward to allow them to enroll and pay in-state tuition from day one. And then we have another proposal that we're looking at to help individuals, especially special immigrant visa, people who served in the military overseas, apply for and get engaged with the state workforce. So this is, again, a proposal here today. We're not going to take an action. We're going to hold it open and take a look at the May revision and hopefully plug this issue in a few weeks. So thank you for your testimony and for your support.